Speaking of Susan Rice, Steve Bannon, who Blake was mentioning, leaving that position on the NSC, said that Susan Rice optionalized the NSC during the last administration. So I was put on the NSC to ensure it was de-operationalized. General McMaster has the NSC back to its proper function. Again, this coming up from Steve Bannon, the White House chief strategist, and more or less saying that this was something that he felt was a natural thing to do, since they felt that the NSC was in better hands right now and there was no need for essentially a watchdog there. All right, so former defense official Van Hipp, we've got former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie and former CIA Analyst Tara Maller. Tara, what do you make of this whole Bannon thing and that he was there essentially to sort of play in eyes on a council that had veered off course under Susan Rice? You could use the same definition when it came to General Flynn, and now it better served with McMaster. What do you make of that?
I think there are a few things to see here. Basically, when Bannon was first named to the National Security Council, the Trump administration got a lot of pushback, a lot of criticism for that move because he put a political advisor on the NSC. Since then, in addition to the criticism, you've seen McMaster come in. I think he's probably taking on a bigger role. I know he's brought in some people, and I think maybe the Trump administration realized that Bannon was not the best person to have that special position, unprecedented for a political advisor on the NSC. You've also seen sort of a shake-up in terms of the administration trying to sort out what its foreign policy positions are on issues like Syria, on issues like North Korea, and on issues like Middle East peace. And I think there was a lot of pushback about Bannon's role, particularly because of his lack of expertise in the national security arena. And I think this is a good move by the Trump administration. Shows maybe they're learning from some of their early mistakes and correcting them.
You know, I'm just wondering, Van Hipp, you've been around these circles for a while. I'm not saying anything that you're old and all, but you're seasoned, as they say. And Van, one of the things I wonder is, like a Jared Kushner in a role that eclipses sometimes, at least in the eyes of many watching, Rex Tillerson over at the Department of State. That's got to bother some folks.
Well, you say I got some season. I got a little bit of gray hair, though, too. But, Neil, I'm not surprised, though, about what the announcement on Bannon today. There's been speculation about that for a week or so. Don't forget that when he went in there, we did not have a director of national intelligence, Dan Coats. So when Dan Coats got confirmed, took his role on the NSC, I think it was logical that he would come off. And don't forget, Steve Bannon was a strong advocate of General McMaster. So I'm not that surprised. And I got to say this, I'm so proud that this president reached out to King Abdullah in their meeting today. I got to know King Abdullah over 20 years ago when he commanded the Jordanian Special Forces. Neil, he's the real deal. He came to this Congress a couple years ago complaining that the Obama administration was not giving him what he needed to take the fight to radical Islam. This president is reaching out to King Abdullah, who I think needs to be one of our most important allies in the Middle East. You know,
Carl Higbie, you could ask then what Abdullah can do here. I mean, obviously, given the fact that it borders Syria, that he's in a unique position also to jawbone the Russians and maybe to make more concessions or to force, President Assad to do more than he's done. But Assad might feel protected knowing that no one wants to, at least in this administration, throw him out. So what are we to make of that and where this is all going with Syria?
Well, I think, keep in mind, Abdullah has never been one to shy away from a fight. He's made a career of it, actually. And, not too long ago, he almost completely exhausted his arsenal in bombing raids against threats to his country. Yeah, so, I mean, King Abdullah is a great ally of ours in the area. If we want to take this fight, I mean, there's literally two options in Syria. We can leave Assad there, or we can take him out. If we take him out, well, then we might have to deal with the Russians, and we have to spend 50 years rebuilding the government. If we leave him there, we got to get out of there altogether and allow him to do whatever he wants and not whine about it anymore. So the options are very clear, and Abdullah can play a huge role.
I want to bring Danny Coulson into this discussion, the former FBI Deputy Assistant Director. And Danny, one of the things you always hear about these foreign policy matters, and even the role that we have checking and who's talking to whom and what, the Susan Rice thing comes up, and that they can always claim we're not doing anything for political purposes. But in a way, that's great cover, right? Because that could be your goal, but all of a sudden then it doesn't have to be made to look like it is.
Yeah, I think we have to remember, Neil, that the great authority that our intelligence services have is dependent upon their dedication to protecting the privacy interests of American citizens. And when I was there, and I know it continues today, there's a great effort placed on not unmasking people who are innocently caught up in these surveillance techniques. Remember, too, Susan Rice is not an operative. She's a policy advisor. And for her to ask an individual in the intelligence community to unmask somebody, that's inappropriate. That's done by the agency that collects it. It's done by professionals. In order to do it, there has to be a law enforcement purpose or an intelligence purpose. She wouldn't know if there was a law enforcement purpose or an intelligence purpose. And for her to do that, it says volumes about where we are right now. And I question why that stuff was done. If I was running the congressional committee to do this, I'd want to know, why did you release that information to her?
You know, we're looking at, by the way, the front line as they're all getting seated in the position, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. And Tara, there is this discomfort expressed among some that they have such a prominent role. Every administration does have a kitchen cabinet, or at least those with whom it relies on for advice, maybe disproportionate to those who are in official capacity. In this case, both his daughter and Jared Kushner are in official capacities on paying ones, but I'm sure it's chafing at Rex Tillerson and some others, maybe not, that they're kind of second fiddle to these guys. What do you make of that?
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure Ivanka and Jared are both very smart, competent, experienced individuals in their fields. They're around my age, but they have not been working foreign policy issues. They have not served in the military. They have not served at the State Department. They have not worked on Capitol Hill on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Their background and experiences, which I'm sure are vast, and I'm sure they have great expertise in real estate and in the business world. And I think perhaps if President Trump wants to use them in an advisory capacity, he should use them within the realm of their expertise. But to sort of have this sort of broad-reaching, sending Jared Kushner with the Joint Chiefs to Iraq, solving Middle East peace, having him weigh in on Syria, and Ivanka's role also slightly unclear in terms of what her portfolio of issues actually is. I think they're going to need to do a better job defining their area, their roles of expertise. This is the White House. People that work in the White House have deep-rooted expertise and experience. Diplomats have served in their countries, working on their countries for decades in some cases, and these are not easy and light issues. North Korea is launching missiles. They just launched another one last night. Syria, the regime just launched a chemical weapons attack. These are some of the most serious, intractable issues that our country has dealt with for decades, and I think we really should be turning to leadership that has worked these issues for decades. And if he wants to have family members play advisory roles, fine. Put them in, aide-like positions to assist him on political matters and within their areas of expertise. But I think this is going to cause some problems, particularly as you see us moving into areas of potential crises with countries like North Korea who are testing us right now.
All right, we're watching, by the way, as you're speaking there, Queen Rania of King Abdullah II's wife, and of course Melania Trump, so only seconds away now from the president and the king. What do you want to hear out of these two leaders regarding, first off, Syria, Van?
You're talking
Van, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
They're going to work together first on radical Islam, but also I think King Abdullah, and this is an opportunity for, I think, President Trump to engage Putin. Everybody talks about his cozy relationship with Putin, but yet he's one of the foreign leaders he's never met with. But I think this is an opportunity for the president to reach out to Putin and say, hey, you helped sustain the Syrian regime.